All right, welcome back to another episode of Zero Downtime. How you doing, Logan?
Living the life, John. How are you?
Oh, that's good. Nice creative intro there. All right, on today's show, we're going to talk about a ClickFix attack and what that is. Oh, as well. Apple is maybe finally going to kill the Chromebook. We'll see. Switching from Windows to Linux, it's easier than you think. The mysterious case of the stolen voice. There's a 0-day in Google Chrome that you should patch now, and we're going to talk about what I kind of alluded to last week with Windows 11 slop. But before we start with all that, let's do our meme of the day here. So we've got the Buzz Lightyear and the Woody, and it says Chromebooks, just like laptops, except they're always broken. So how was your week?
It was good.
Yeah. Anything exciting?
It was pretty uneventful for events wise.
Okay. Well, yeah, we had State Swim. And it went well. Iowa City, not my town. I'm not a big city guy, and Iowa City is just too big for me. But I really have to complain about Cedar Rapids. No hate on anyone that's from Cedar Rapids. Cedar Rapids is the ones right before Iowa City.
Did they swim in Cedar Rapids or did they swim in Iowa City?
They swim at the U of I.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the pool there. So we had to drive through Cedar Rapids, and they've got these speed traps there. And the Google Maps warns of these speed traps. And so what you have is this mass amount of traffic doing like 80 miles an hour. And then right before the speed trap, everyone slows down to 55. Like, how is that not more dangerous?
I was just going to ask you if you got caught in the speed trap for you saying you hated it. But
Well, so, my wife's got the new car.
Yes.
So it doesn't have license plates.
Correct.
So I don't know how they're going to find me. Have you ever gotten a ticket from one of them cams before?
I think once.
Oh, yeah? Did you pay it?
Oh, I'm sure I did.
No, I don't. I've gotten tickets from those things. I bet I've gotten 4 or 5 tickets from those things. And from anything I can tell, it's all like a civil penalty. Like they're saying the city says you owe them X number of dollars. That's not a cop. That's not a police officer. That's not somebody stopping you, the driver of the car, and writing you a ticket. Right?
Yes.
Like what did that... That's a worthless ticket, so I just don't pay them.
So did you even slow down for him?
Well, I had to because the people in front of me were slowing down, but I was weaving in and out pretty hard. I wanted to get home. I didn't drive on the way there, but on the way back I did. And
You're man on a mission.
Oh man, I wanted to get home. And then I left my wife's credit card in the parking garage. I put it in the machine, and I handed her the ticket after, I scanned the ticket. I handed her the ticket, and apparently I never pulled the credit card back out.
Well, that's not winning.
So she went and canceled the card. Luckily, you can do it through the app.
Yeah.
So she was able to cancel the card. Yeah. So, and then yesterday, my middle son had a surgery on his hand. He's kind of a hurting unit. He got he wrecked a tendon in his hand, and so they had to put this like pipe through his hand and get out all the scar tissue. Yeah, he's a hurting unit. But we got to stop at the Hall Foreign Candy Company, so that was a bonus.
What is your favorite thing there?
Oh, over the years it's gotten worse because they don't make their own candy anymore.
Oh, okay.
The Foreign Candy Company used to make their own candy, but they just don't anymore. So I love the raspberries because back when I was a kid, I remembered you could go to the store and it was like this huge cardboard box just wide open and a scooper, and they just weighed it. Now it's in a bag and it's all formal.
Yep.
So I know, unfortunately,
too clean for you.
Yeah, it's not trashy enough for me, Logan.
I see.
So we did get to stay overnight in Sioux Falls, and obviously, my favorite restaurant in Sioux Falls is JL Beers.
Yes,
but South Dakota has that rule that if your restaurant makes more money with alcohol sales than it does with food sales, then anyone under 21 can't go. So I've never been able to take my kids there. We stayed down on Phillips at that hotel on Phillips.
Okay.
Before my son's surgery, we had to be there at 6:30. So I went down to JL Beers. Didn't order before because I wanted to enjoy a frosty beverage before I walked back to the hotel. But I ordered burgers and all that. And we ate them in the hotel, and Oliver said he loved them, so that was a win.
Look at you, just getting them primed to be able to sit there once they get older.
All right, let's talk about the Microsoft ClickFix attack. So a ClickFix attack is kind of an interesting name, but in the world of AI, the idea of copying and pasting is becoming more and more prevalent. So AI makes an output of something, and then you just blindly copy and paste, and assuming it's going to work. And obviously, in the world of Linux commands or even Windows commands or different websites, whatever, you're just assuming that AI is doing it right. Well, attackers have started to learn that now basically the people will just copy and paste. And so these attackers, what they did was they stood up their own DNS server. So DNS, just to rewind, is, for lack of a better way to describe it, it's the phone book of the internet. When you type in google.com, it translates it out to numbers, and those numbers mean something to computers. The name doesn't mean anything to computers, but the numbers do. An IP address is what it basically stands for. And so what they did was they stood up their own DNS server, and instead of being like NSLookup is a way to like command line lookup where the address of a domain name. So what they did was instead of like saying NSLookup google.com, actually it did the IP, but anyway, instead of it being like this is where it goes to, they changed it to a command. And then and then in the ClickFix, what they did was if you copied out the whole command, it would parse that, and then just look at the name field and then run a command, a PowerShell command, and install a rat, which is a remote access Trojan on your computer.
I mean, with AI, everyone is just copying and pasting what it gives you.
Yeah. And I think this is going to be way more prevalent in the future because people are not going to stop copy and pasting. So you're going to find plugins for Google Chrome that's going to like investigate what you're copying off.
Okay.
To make sure it's not dangerous, right? If it hasn't been invented yet, we should invent it.
I was just going to say, I'm like, that is a genius idea.
But yeah, what it did was it actually executed a call to download another program. So it uses PowerShell, and PowerShell in Windows is a lot more powerful than the command line. Maybe it's part of the name. And it did what's called an IWR, Invoke-WebRequest, downloaded the rat, installed it, and that gave the attacker full access to your machine. We don't know exactly who the target was for this because it wasn't coming from AI. We're assuming that where it's coming from is somebody had it on their website and there were some kind of tutorial, something like that, or maybe even something where they like a support scam where they would say copy and paste this.
Yeah,
and it's a lot harder to you're not installing VNC or TeamViewer. You're installing this other thing and it looks more advanced than it does when you're double clicking.
Is there a way for someone to know that was going to happen ahead of time?
Sure. If you run a program like ThreatLocker or something like that, that prevents everything from running.
Okay.
And as far as home users go, ThreatLocker might be a little bit of a pain, but if you're willing to accept the pain, your computer won't be compromised.
Sure.
I mean, it's what I mean when I say pain is you try to run a program, you request access, you get out your phone, you scan the QR code, and you say allow. Once you've allowed it one time, it'll work forever, unless there's some kind of update or something like that. And most programs just work out of the box, like Microsoft Office, all of those. But it's your one-off programs, your games, things like that kind of are tough to start at the beginning. But once you've added them and you've run them, it'll run perfectly every time. So if you're ever thinking about that and you're ever worried about something like this happening to you, ThreatLocker, I think Huntress is similar. We sell ThreatLocker, but Huntress is similar, does a very similar thing, it's called Zero Trust. It prevents anything from running.
And probably worth people looking into.
Well, especially if you're a little tech savvy or someone in your house is a little tech savvy, they could be in charge of the ThreatLocker and be like, well, no, you can't install that game because that game is a virus.
Yep.
All right, we're going to talk about Apple being the Chromebook killer. So I came across this. Well, Apple historically has always been high-end hardware, or at least expensive hardware. Whether it be high-end or not, I don't know, but it's expensive. But then Apple generally will come out with a budget thing later. So they become popular with the high-end product, and then a little bit later, they'll come out with a cheaper one. So think the iPhone, and then go back to the iPhone SE, right? So they made an expensive iPhone, and then they made the iPhone SE. They made the Mac Studio, and then now they make the Mac Mini Studio or Mac Mini or whatever, and it's like the budget version of the computer. It works fine. It's purpose is served, right?
Yep.
So what they're going to do is they're going to come out with a computer, a laptop that's $599 to $699. We're not exactly sure on the price. It's going to have the A18 chip, which is the same chip as the iPhone Max.
Okay.
So it's actually a mobile chip, so it's good on power, but it's not like super high performance. It's 6-core CPU, which is good. It runs ARM just like their whole line does now, but it's not the M series, it's the A series. It's got a 12.9-inch LCD screen. So that's different than like your Mac laptop there. I think that those have LED or OLED screens. So
I think so.
So the brightness won't be as good. But when you think about who Apple is trying to target with this, they're trying to target kids that grew up with Chromebooks. So I sent a text as I was writing this episode yesterday while we were at the doctor's office, Oliver getting his surgery. I texted Ethan and I said, hey, have you always had a Chromebook in front of you? I know they weren't always one-to-one, but like, he's 18 now.
Yep. So
from the time you were in first grade all the way up to 18, have you always had a Chromebook? And he said, yes. And so if you think about that, Apple or Chrome has literally been in his life that entire time. So going to college and I need a computer for note-taking. A Chromebook seems like an obvious choice because that's what he's been taking notes on for the last 12 years or however many years, right?
Yep.
So Apple needs to try to figure out, because Apple always used to be huge in college, right?
Yes.
Even in high school, Apple was huge. Like growing up, we had Apples up until the time I was in high school because they were huge in the education market. Well, Chrome has just killed that, right? So Apple needs a way to push back into the education market, and this is the way to do it. A budget machine. I looked to try to find something similar in a Chromebook. I wasn't able to find exactly the same thing. Some bigger screens, some smaller screens. This computer comes with 8 gigs of memory. Most Chromebooks come with 4 gigs of memory. Most Chromebooks come with 16 gigs of storage. This comes with 256 gigs of storage. So there was nothing that was very comparable.
Okay.
But the price I was finding was right around the $570 range. So for $30 more, you can have a real computer that you can run real applications on. If you're going into software development or you don't know, but you want to dip your toe in software development and not just Android software development, this is, you can do it for $30 more and you're not going to break the bank. So I guess the other downside is a little bit more of the specs. It has one single USB-C where like your computer has Thunderbolt, that Mac Studio has Thunderbolt. This is just USB-C. I said the 256 gigs of storage, they will come in colors.
That'll be a winner for people.
Kind of back to the old days of Apple, the old clamshell Macs where you could get them in different colors.
Yep.
So I think people will like that. So I'm excited to see. I don't know when they're going to be released, but I would suspect they will be released before summer because they want to make sure that they hit the college kids when they're ordering their machines.
Before people go back to school.
Yeah.
That'll be cool. It'll be interesting to see. Knowing you, I know you will end up testing one out.
Back kind of what we were talking about from the last 2 episodes before this, we were kind of talking about how we think that, or I think that the phone should become a computer. Well, now they're taking the CPU out of the phone and putting it into a computer.
Yep.
Almost there.
You're getting close.
All right, switching from Windows to Linux. So this kind of goes with the last segment of the episode, but I wanted to put it here just because it's different enough that I wanted to separate the two and not say to somebody that is sick of Windows slop that they should just switch to Linux. But I want to talk about the why people are choosing to switch to Linux now, and it's actually a movement. In fact, we have somebody at our office who's been a Windows guy forever that actually made Linux his primary driver for his home machine.
Before you get all the way into your segment, and maybe you'll touch on this, do you have to have, can the average user use Linux?
Now, yes.
Okay.
100%. There are different distributions of Linux, and I didn't write any of this, but there are different distributions of Linux, and they're varying levels of complexity. So you have Arch Linux, which is like, if you use Arch, you tell everybody that you use Arch because it's complicated, to Ubuntu, which arguably I would say is not a very good user experience, but it is the one that's sold by most of the vendors. So like Dell, if you buy a Linux, or Lenovo too, if you buy a Linux desktop, it will come with Ubuntu on it. My argument is that Debian or Debian or however you say it is the best Linux distro because you get to select a nice desktop and it's not bloated like Ubuntu is. But back to what I was saying. So some of the things, so first off, what is Linux? Linux is an open source operating system created by Linus Torvalds. It was created because he loved Minix, who was created by his professor in college, but Minix was a licensable software from his professor. It was also not modular, so which means the Linux kernel, you can plug things in and not plug things in. Minix was like a kernel where everything was already built in, so there was no modularization to it. So he decided that he was going to build his own. And Linux is free. And when I say free, it's as in beer. So if I go to the bar, get you a beer and hand you a beer, it's free beer. You're not making the beer. You're not modifying the beer. You're going to drink the beer, right?
Yep.
So that's the idea. So when somebody says it's free, you might be able to modify it, you might be able to redistribute it, or you might be able to see the source code, but it's free and you can use it at no cost. The big deal with Linux, and well, honestly, any operating system, is does it have games, right? So when you think about Unix, when it first came out, one of the first things that they built on the Unix operating system was games.
Is that just so people would feel comfortable, like that they were used to having those games on their machines?
I don't think so. I think, the tech people want to have fun. They want to play solitaire, or they want to play blackjack. They want to play a game, right?
Yep.
It's not all about work. It's about having some fun too. So the big issue with Linux is the 3D environments. So Windows forever has had what's called DirectX. DirectX is a way to access the GPU, so you could build complex environments and offload the processing to the GPU. And that hasn't been a Linux thing. There's things like OpenGL and Vulkan, which are cross-platform across Windows, Mac, Linux, and other operating systems too. But they just haven't been well received by developers. Developers prefer DirectX because I think it might be easier. I'm not a graphical developer, but I think that's why. But with the advent of Steam created this thing called Proton. And Proton is like a bolt-on layer that sits in between DirectX and Vulkan, which means you can take games that are designed for Windows and play them on Linux. It's just a bolt-on. It uses a thing called Wine, and we've talked about Wine before. Wine stands for Wine is not an emulator, and what that means is it's a compatibility layer. So it actually emulates Windows DLL calls. So normally a Windows application talks to the kernel, which talks to the hardware. But when you use Wine on Linux, the Windows app talks to Wine. Wine converts the Windows call to a Linux call, and then talks to the hardware. It talks to the kernel and then talks to the hardware. So it adds like this abstraction layer on top. Historically, anti-cheat engines, which I didn't really know were a thing because I don't game, but wouldn't run on Linux, so it would detect the operating system. But with the advent of Proton, that's all changing. The other problem is that graphics drivers, historically, the vendors don't support the graphics drivers on Linux. But with the advent of AI, the graphics drivers, people like NVIDIA, AMD, are turning and making their drivers better for Linux because people want to run their workloads on Linux. They don't want to run their workloads on Windows. And so because of that, the drivers are better now.
Do you think people will start changing how they program their games as the Linux becomes more of that popular choice?
I think that they'll pick cross-platform over just Windows, yes.
Okay.
Especially as people accept Linux more. And that's what I'm going to talk about next is your business applications. So I know you use Adobe, so I purposely picked them out of this. But a lot of people use Microsoft Office, right? And these are two really big sticking points for mass Linux adaptation, right? You got to have your Adobe.
Yes.
So what is it going to take basically for Microsoft to switch to Linux? For the most part, they have. And what I mean by that is they have chosen to put almost all of their applications in the browser. Now, Excel, for example, isn't as advanced as the desktop version of Excel, but I would bet 90% of the Excel users out there, what's in the web is good enough.
Probably.
So we use, well, I try not to, but sometimes we have to use Microsoft Teams. And there really is no Teams for Linux, but what there is what's called an Electron wrapper. So what that does is it looks like a program on your computer, but it wraps the website in an actual application so I can open it, minimize it to the system tray and all that other stuff. And so you could do the same thing with Word. You could do the same thing with all of the other Microsoft applications, and it would work just fine. So we've solved that problem for the most part. But Adobe is one of those really big sticking points, and they seem to not be interested in running on Linux, and I don't know why.
I was like, that's interesting that they're not willing to adapt.
Right. So obviously, you know this. Whenever we're at a restaurant and I want to order a Dr. Pepper, or I know they don't have Dr. Pepper, I still ask for it, because if I don't ask for it, they won't know that people want it. And I think maybe one time in the history of asking for Dr. Pepper, a restaurant that we have frequented finally got Dr. Pepper. So it does work. And so I think that the people that
be committed.
So I think that the people that are interested in those need to make it known to Adobe, because Adobe runs on Mac, like Dreamweaver and all the programs you use run on Mac. They obviously have the ability to run it on Linux too. They just choose not to. They think that the user base might be too small. There may be weird bugs on Linux or something like that, that they'll have to just focus application development time on that for 10 users or something. But I think they'd be surprised, because there's a lot of applications on Linux that are open source that try to emulate what Adobe does. But, and I don't know this because I don't get into the weeds with Photoshop, but you say that yes, GIMP has some of the options, but they don't have all of the options.
Correct.
So I don't know what that means, but
it just probably depends what you're trying to do.
Right. And I don't do anything that advanced. So David Green sues Google. Did you know that almost every single song, country, rock, rap, I don't know about rap, probably rap, is made up of the same 4 chords?
I didn't know what every song was, but I've heard of the 4 chords before.
Yeah. So it's C, G, A minor, and F. Did you also know it's not possible to copyright chords?
I didn't know that was. Well, the whole 4 chord thing, I knew that you could do whatever almost with those, but I didn't know that you couldn't do it copyright beyond that. Right.
So the most famous court case I could think of is Vanilla Ice versus Queen. Ice Ice Baby versus Under Pressure. You know, you've gotten the sadness when you've heard the beat come on the radio and it turns out to be Under Pressure instead of Vanilla Ice.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And the other one that was more recent was Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams, Blurred Lines versus Marvin Gaye's Gotta Give It Up. And that one was interesting because that was actually a lawsuit about chords.
Okay.
And Marvin Gaye won. And it actually shook the music industry, because if you can copyright chords, then you could copyright the 4 chords. Right. And so every other artist would have to pay you for the 4 chords. Well, it turned out that copyright case turned out that it was more copywriting the vibe of the song. So,
and who dictates the vibe of the song?
Yeah, the judge. I mean, if you listen to Blurred Lines and you listen to Gotta Give It Up, it's the same song.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's so obvious that they copied it, but even so, they copied the chords but really they copied the vibe. Anyways, Marvin Gaye won the Marvin Gaye estate won $7.4 million in that lawsuit. So it was crazy. Now, Google supposedly used, you've listened to NPR. Everybody's had to at some point in their life, just because, if you're traveling in the middle of nowhere, sometimes it's the only radio station you get.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And NPR uses the Neumann U87 condenser microphone. They're pretty cheap mics, about $4,000 a piece, but they sound beautiful, right? NPR, the hosts on NPR always sound great, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's highs, lows. I mean, it's probably some of the best sounding radio DJs in the market because they use the best hardware. Anyways, David Green has spent his life perfecting his voice, and he no longer works for NPR, but he spent his life perfecting his voice. He's alleging Google stole his voice for NotebookLM. Have you used NotebookLM?
I have not.
Okay, I didn't know NotebookLM existed until yesterday.
I was like, I don't even know if I could tell you what that was.
Super cool. So if you're taking notes, you can type your notes in. Google will use AI to expound upon the notes, look up more stuff. Supposedly, it's supposed to be hallucinating less than normal, and it will give you back whatever you're writing your notes back in podcast style format. So it will actually talk to you like a podcast for whatever you're taking notes on.
Interesting.
And this is the thing that David Green supposedly says that Google trained using his voice to read these notes back. But who better to train their voice on it? Because he sounds great.
Yep.
Right? Of course, it begs the question, who owns your voice?
Can they prove he did it?
I don't know. I mean, to me, it's
they, Google.
To me, it's the same thing as blurred lines versus got to give it up. Right? It sounds the same, but it's still different.
Can you imagine? You'd be so mad. Or would you be honored?
I would be honored if somebody stole my voice. That'd be great. As long as they're doing good things with it.
You would want to cut.
I would want to cut. You're right. And so when I was writing this, I was thinking about even more than this. And I was thinking about expanding this to movies and things like that, where you don't probably watch Black Mirror.
No.
Okay. Well, it's awesome. And you should watch it if you don't.
Okay.
Each episode is different, but they all live in the same like universe.
Okay.
This kind of dystopian universe, we'll say. So things happen to these people. So for example, Joan is Awful is a show that is a show and a show. So there's a person named Joan. She sold her rights to this company called Streamberry, Netflix, Streamberry. And they follow her around, but Selma Hayek actually plays her in the show. And so everything she does, Selma Hayek does, and she figures this out, loses her job, loses her boyfriend, loses her dignity, loses everything, right? So she does just awful things to make Selma Hayek do it. And so Selma Hayek then ends up coming and seeing her, basically getting her to stop doing these awful things. I was thinking about actors in the same situation of this, if they sell their face, Brad Pitt, whatever, sell themselves that they can be put into one of these movies, but really have no say in what they do.
I mean, that'd be about almost, I'm guessing, a lot of the movies they play.
Yeah. Well, it's similar to what we talked about a long time ago with putting the AI generating fake nudes.
Yeah.
You don't really have control over what people are doing. And that's the same kind of here.
Yeah.
So back in the day, I experimented with voice cloning. I was actually curious how well it worked. And I had this idea to bring back voices of people that were dead. And I ended up abandoning the project because it was too real. Because I was like, I could take these voices, I could put them on the phone, and because I know a lot about the phone, and I could do it in real time. And I ended up abandoning the project because the voices came back too real. And I was too afraid that people would become too connected. There's another Black Mirror episode called Be Right Back. And what that is there's a husband and a wife. He leaves to go do something, gets in a car wreck, dies. This company reaches out to the wife and says, there's a way you can talk to your husband. And she starts calling him on the phone, and it just sounds exactly like him. It's just like him, right?
Mm-hmm. And
then it gets worse and worse and worse. I'm not going to give it away. It's another good episode. But before all the rest of the stuff happened, she became addicted to talking on her phone. And at one point, she broke the phone, and she was frantic, right? So I think about more than just the Google getting sued by David Green for the voice, and about who owns the voice. Who owns the voice after someone dies? Right?
Yeah.
What happens if you can bring back the dead?
Well, what's crazy is kind of what you're talking about now with AI, for them to be able to like comprehend and have a conversation back with you would just be creepy as well.
I was thinking about uploading consciousness. So I could take my political beliefs, I could take my religious beliefs, any of these things, and people would know them, and then they'd put them into AI and say, you are this person now. So anytime anyone talks to you, these are your opinions. They're unchangeable,
mm-hmm.
right? And so that person's going to have a similar opinion to what the dead person had, and technically gets to live forever, which is so weird to think about.
Yeah, it is weird. I'm sure there will be such a thing.
I guarantee you there'll be such a thing. And we've seen people fall in love with AI, right?
Yep.
And we're going to see people be just devastated by this as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the Chrome 0-day patch. Or there's a Chrome 0-day. You should patch now. So what is a 0-day? A 0-day is essentially means that the vendor has had 0 days to patch software. Generally speaking, there's like the thing called responsible disclosure. So say you were a security researcher or just some dude that was using something and you found a bug in the software. You would if you're a security researcher, you would do a write-up. You would send that off to the maker, in this case, Google. You would give Google 90 days to patch and release the new software. Then after the 90 days, you would disclose.
Is this like a written law? This is like what program or people do?
It's not a law. So most of the big companies have what they call bug bounties.
Okay.
And that's where they pay you when you find a bug. And they pay you based on how bad the bug is. Okay. So like if a bug is a whole system takeover, you're going to get paid more than if it just crashes the browser, right? So in order to get the bug bounty, you have to follow the rules. And the rules are usually a 90-day disclosure. After you submit whatever the thing is to the vendor, they can adjust that time and say, like, look, we're going to need 120 days. Just keep quiet on this for 120 days. And then you can release it. Because you, as the security researcher, you want credit for finding the bug, but you also want everyone to be safe.
Do you think they ever just slide those under the table? Like they don't want you to know that they happen?
Of course. But with open source, it's a little bit harder because you can see the commits.
Okay.
So Chrome is based on Chromium, right?
Yep.
And so Chromium is the open source version of Chrome.
Okay.
So most of the commits that happen to Chromium. Most of the bugs are in Chromium. So you can see the commits, but there have been some pretty high profile bugs like in Linux, basically. I can't remember if it was NTP or what it was, but basically or SSH maybe, they had to quietly patch the bugs, but it's hard to do it. So they would quietly patch them, release the new packages, wait for most people to update, and then put out the warning, right? It's weird because open source is hard.
Yeah, I don't know. It just kind of goes back to if it was a monster one that they really wouldn't want to show face with that.
Right. So Google's vulnerability is what's called a free after use vulnerability. And we're kind of getting into the weeds here. But so normally when you load a program up, it uses memory, right? And so the program will request a certain amount of memory. So I need 16K of memory. So it grabs that memory, it uses that memory, and then it frees and releases the memory. But what it does is C and C++ use these things called pointers, and a pointer points to a spot in memory. And when they don't tear down the pointers, when you free and release memory, the memory still exists and has the things in it. We kind of talked about that last week with rebooting.
Yep.
So what it does is it leaves the pointer in. So if somebody else accesses the same pointer, they can access that old piece of memory and use it for whatever they need using it for.
Okay.
And while we don't exactly know what the 0-day was yet, Google has yet to expose or tell us what it is. They have patched it, but they patched it by backporting old code. So backport is when you take something that's old that you've rewritten for it and bring it forward.
So would that just say like when they released an update is when the vulnerability came and they're trying to get it back to where it was
right.
safe?
Right. So they made some kind of enhancement that introduced a bug.
Okay.
And so the way to fix the bug was bring the old software back and then rethink what they were going to do before.
Okay.
Or it's such an emergency that they have to bring it back now. Otherwise, they're going to be hosed, right?
Yep.
So they need to just bring it back and then figure out what to do. All right. I think that's what I had on that. All right. So Windows 11 slop. So there's a term on the internet that's kind of gone wild, AI slop, right?
Yep.
Familiar with that?
Well, we talked about it a little bit last time with Hollywood and movies.
Right. So there's AI slop in pictures, AI slop in writing. Like you can still tell that things are made by AI because it's sloppy.
Yep.
That's the slop. So Microsoft has decided that something like 50% of their code base is going to be written by AI. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
And it's a lot for a company that is an operating system company.
May I ask why someone would come and want to make that statement out loud?
Because it's so good. AI is so good.
Okay.
Because Microsoft has two things that they actually have to do. One, create an operating system. Two, create value for the shareholders.
By eliminating half of the
by staff. If you can eliminate half your staff, but keep the same product, your revenue goes up.
Yeah.
So that's good for your shareholders. But what it's turning out to be is not good for the operating system. So some people I guess are not only disenchanted by the AI being written, but it's also AI writing the code, but it's also being disenchanted by the AI that's getting embedded into Microsoft. So for example, there's a piece of software in AI in Microsoft called Recall. What Recall does is every so often takes a screenshot of your computer screen and sends it to Microsoft. And you don't initiate the screenshot.
Did you have to approve this?
I think at first you didn't, but now you do.
Okay.
But once you do, it's just sending screenshots off. And what that does is if you're having a problem with your computer, Microsoft can basically clippy you and be like, hey, I can help. Right?
That just sounds like you have a virus and should be calling your IT company to get that away.
I don't disagree. So people aren't, enamored by features like that, or they're building in their AI engine, which I think is backed by OpenAI. They're building that just into the operating system, Copilot, building that into the operating system, and it's ruining how it works. I think AI done right is elegant. AI done wrong is awful and could be
sloppy.
Sloppy, yeah. But besides that, when you talk about the operating system and some of the problems that it's been happening, is the quality assurance is what seems to be lacking. So in the past few months, we've seen infinite boot loops. So Microsoft will do a patch Tuesday, and then the next day, a subset of computers will just start rebooting continuously over and over and over again because they didn't QA it right. They built this patch, they built whatever was wrong to fix it, but they didn't test it on the right subset of computers, and so the machine just keeps rebooting. BSODs, which are blue screens of death, have just become rampant. Really shoddy server updates. So we've had. Luckily, we haven't. So what we do at A&P, and I don't want to give away the secret sauce, but we wait 24 hours before we push updates because I want to see what happens to the rest of the world.
You guys can fail first.
If there's something that Microsoft's like, you have to patch now, we'll do that then. But if it's a general availability update, we'll usually wait 24 hours before we push it to all of our servers because we don't want something like this to happen because that brings a business to their knees, right?
Yep.
Microsoft has removed the account creation bypass. So it's your computer, right? And say you want to run Windows Home Edition. There's no way to create an account anymore without putting your computer online and making a Microsoft account.
Wow.
So you log in with Microsoft. It's awful.
Almost everything seems like they make you have an account to do about anything.
But it's your computer.
I don't disagree with you.
That brings me to the next thing. I've been working on like kind of a pristine image of Windows to give to our customers, licensed and everything, but the pristine image, and a lot of our customers, they don't want OneDrive. They don't want the Xbox app. Well, it's a business computer, right? We don't, like, maybe they use Google. They don't use OneDrive. So you cannot uninstall OneDrive. It is impossible to uninstall OneDrive from the computer.
Wow.
Like, you can uninstall it from your profile.
Yep.
As soon as a new profile gets created, it's reinstalled. Xbox, the Xbox app, same way. On a business machine, you just can't run a command and uninstall Xbox. You can uninstall it once your account's created, but me, as the guy creating the original pristine image, can't do it.
That's interesting because how many people want that on their business computers?
Correct. When you, Task Manager is the thing when you press Control-Delete, you can go to Task Manager and see all the tasks running on your computer. When you click the X to close it, it opens more Task Manager processes. Right? How crazy is that?
That one doesn't even make sense.
Another bug that hasn't been fixed is when you go to whatever the start is called now. I still call it start from the Windows 95.
Yeah, I would call it too. I don't even know what you'd call it.
And you go to shutdown, the computer won't even shut down. It just turns right back on again.
It's like a restart?
It's like a restart, even though it's shut down. And this is a bug that has existed since Windows 11 inception.
So if you want your machine all the way off, you just unplug it?
Basically. To me, this is like a shining example of where we don't need AI. Right?
Well, it sounds like they're already having issues.
And it also seems to me that Microsoft has kind of moved quality assurance from internal to external.
Or got rid of it.
Well, what I'm saying, they moved it to us. We are quality assurance now.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And this won't stop. Microsoft won't learn a lesson because they are adding shareholder value, right? Until people stop buying computers with Windows on them, until people refuse to use Windows, Microsoft will still keep making the slop. They'll still keep putting the ads in their operating system. They will still continue to do it until people say no more.
I think it'll be a long time before people, like the general mass, is willing to say no more Microsoft.
Right. I agree, because Microsoft has been so ingrained in us for so long. Windows has, Windows 3.1, Windows 1, Windows has just been around forever. And people write their software for it because it's easy to write software for it. That's why.
Well, and I just think like it's already getting a little sloppy. What happens in 10 years?
Oh, yeah. Right.
Like, are you going back to all human?
Well,
Did
that brings
AI
up that's my next point. The case for people. And I've alluded to this in previous episodes before. So people use computers. People notice the bugs. AI is a software program. So if you think about AI trying to describe a bug or work around a bug, it'll do it with no big deal, right? But people, bugs bother them. When I want to shut my computer off and it doesn't shut off, that bothers me, right? And I will spend a day's worth of time figuring out why my computer doesn't shut down just so I can get it to shut down. AI won't do that. AI will just be like, "No, computer doesn't shut down."
Yeah.
It'll throw some suggestions before it really starts to go crazy and give you off the wall wonky answers, and you still got to figure it out yourself. I think in the future, the slogan will be for humans, by humans. And it will be no part of this software touched AI from inception, quality control to release. And this will be the next big thing. This will be the next big wave. Even Linus Torvalds of Linux has said it's okay to use AI to write your kernel patches. But you better believe if you write a terrible kernel patch, he is going to flame you in the mailing list.
You'll get a nice call out.
Yeah, you definitely do. And if you haven't ever followed Linus Torvalds' rants about shoddy patches to the kernel, you just Google it, and then it's in there. And for a while, he actually came out and said he was going to be nicer, and that lasted like a month, and then he was not nice again. I mean, I'm sure he's a nice guy.
I'm sure, but I am sure people have got, like, you would enjoy that rant, and then now when they get kind, you're like,
Billions, trillions probably dollars worth of companies run Linux. And so Linus takes that very seriously, right? Like if you write a bad patch and it causes the kernel to panic, which is basically like a B-sod for Linux, it causes the kernel to panic, that's a problem for him. So he's going to make sure that the code that gets put into the kernel is top notch.
Which more power to him for caring.
Yeah. Well, that's what I got today, Logan.
Well, I got a question for you, John.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes along the lines of public Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're at a coffee shop or in a hotel.
Yeah.
What kind of risks do you have joining a public Wi-Fi? Or are there risks, or is it exaggerated for when people tell you to almost avoid them?
Yeah. So the risks used to be bigger in the past. With the advent of basically SSL on everything or TLS on everything, it's a lot less. So when I first went to DEF CON, like DEF CON 10 or something, it was a long time ago, and I've only been to 2, but the first one I went to, there was this thing called the Wall of Sheep. And so what they did is DEF CON built their own wireless network. They built their own network, everything, because the hotel obviously didn't trust it. If you don't know what DEF CON is, it's a hacker conference, right?
Yep.
And what they did was the hotel basically required them to build their own network because they weren't going to let them use theirs. Like, I'm not kidding you when I say, I got on the elevator to go to my hotel room. Somebody had popped where the phone is and then like used alligator clips clipped into it. And then they were just talking to people when they got on the elevator. Certainly had access to the cameras, right? Like there's a reason that DEF CON gets kicked out of all these hotels. Anyways, there was this thing called the Wall of Sheep. And what it was I think a TV screen on the wall, but it was bigger, like one of them old boards you would have seen at an airport, right? And what it would have is the person's, say it was email in this case, would have their email address and like the first 4 characters of their password and the last 4 characters of their password, and then stars in between. And basically what it meant is like, we know your username, we know your password, we know where you're connecting, like you're owned. It's called the Wall of Sheep.
And these were of people that were at the conference?
Connecting to the public Wi-Fi.
Okay.
So that's where it's relevant here. That was back when SSL and TLS, the encryption, wasn't such a big thing, right? You would pop or IMAP your mail servers with unencrypted credentials.
Yep.
Now, pretty much everything requires, if you're using 365 or using Exchange or using mostly any other mail provider, Gmail, any of them, they require the connection to be secured. So there's that. Most everything is over SSL now. If it's not, you maybe need to rethink the provider that you're using. But what the public Wi-Fi can see, unless you're doing some specific things on your computer and not even just using a VPN on your computer, but doing like what's called DOE, which is an encrypted DNS. But you would have to set that up and you would have to know how to do that. I guess Firefox does it by default. But anyways, they can actually see the sites you're going to. So they can see the sites. They can do what's called a SSL peek. So what they can do is they can see the certificate. They can't break it, but they can see where you're going, and they can see the SSL certificate kind of exchange.
Mm-hmm.
So they can see where you're going. But so can your ISP. So can your VPN provider. So I don't know. Maybe that's doesn't matter.
So you're just saying nowadays the vulnerabilities aren't as high anymore.
The vulnerabilities back in the day were your password's going to get leaked. Then they're going to get into your email. They're going to get into your computer. They're going to get into all your stuff, right? And most everything is SSL encrypted, and it's almost impossible to get into the middle of an SSL negotiation, right? So this side talks to this side. If there's a guy in the middle, they can't see it. It's encrypted. And if you try to break it, both sides are going to know that it was broke.
Okay.
So
perfect.
Yeah.
That's all I have for you today.
All right. I'd like to ask everyone to like, share, and subscribe. And I almost forgot. Today is my wife's birthday. Not the day this is coming out, but today. So I better tell her happy birthday because I told you happy birthday.
You did tell me happy birthday.
And I don't want to hear about it. I also learned, don't ask women what their birthday is. I had to do the math. Because I don't. She's like the same age as me.
I was going to say, aren't you the same age?
Yeah, but I don't remember how old I am.
Oh, geez.
All right. See you on the next one.